Sitting in the meeting room, there's a phrase we hear from clients a lot. I know I messed up, and we hear it a lot. I mean, a lot. But here's the thing. Nobody is immune to making financial mistakes. When you realize that you've made a misstep, you're empowered to create change, or at least that's my view.
Yeah.
What concerns us sometimes, though, is that we see people who make mistakes that they don't realize are actually impacting their financial journey. So today, we're going to focus in on 3 money mistakes that you could be making that you may not realize are derailing you.
Yeah.
So that's where we're going to kind of pick in. Now, to be clear, we've made some, and so has everybody else in the world. So I always say you don't have time to waste on just being miserable about it.
Right.
A friend of mine shared something with me the other day, and I loved it. She said, if you get a flat tire, you don't go slash the other 3.
Right.
You know, if you have something happen, you don't just go and just derail the whole system. You go repair the single tire that's damaged. Mm-hmm. So if you've made one of these mistakes, don't just say, "Oh, I'm bad with money. Moving on."
Right.
No, make some choices to change.
Yeah, and I like that example because it's like if you know what the problem is, right? You know that tire is no longer beneficial to you. Then you know where the issue is. You know what to fix. Right. So in the same way, we want to just give a little attention to these 3 mistakes, because once you recognize it, you're empowered to be able to change it and see it in a new light.
Yes. So the first one we're going to talk about is carrying balances on credit cards. And what this really typically indicates,
AKA
overspending.
Yeah.
Credit card interest rates and fees cost Americans, this number makes me sick to my stomach, in 2022, Americans paid $120 billion with a B just in interest rates and fees.
Gosh. And that's
more money than I'll see in my entire lifetime, my children's lifetime, and their grandchildren's lifetime. Like, that's a lot of money.
Yeah. And that's, exactly that. And again, that's just America. I mean, I know that credit cards aren't just an American thing. It's
correct.
So I'm sure that number is staggering when you think about the worldwide numbers on it. But the current APR, right? So the current
average
annual percentage rate of interest on these credit cards is about 23.99%. So basically 24%.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's assuming you have a good credit score.
Yeah.
You know, kind of that average credit score. If you have, kind of a subpar credit score, you could be paying closer to 27%. So you think about things costing you a fourth more than if you had just saved to pay cash.
Yeah.
That's a lot with what people are using. Because we did an episode a long time ago that talked about, it was like the buy now, pay later apps that are out there.
That's right.
And how people were using it for groceries. Not luxury items, groceries.
Yeah. Putting
off paying for their groceries. So
although luxury items are some of the main culprits, right? So
yes.
That, as well as just non-essential spending, are the 2 most common reasons that people use credit cards and overspend.
And the emotional weight of debt can lead to inaction. When you feel overwhelmed, you often just bury your head in the sand. You ignore the credit card statements. You don't open them, and you just kind of sit and do nothing. So we want to encourage you not to do that by giving you a couple of tips that might help you if you're in that boat. One that people don't realize they can do is negotiating with their current provider for a better rate or a promotional rate. Say, hey, give me 6 months of interest free or a lowered interest rate. A lot of times they're willing to do that, especially if you explain to them that you've partnered with another company and you're thinking about doing a balance transfer. They're often much more accommodating if you can kind of leverage that. Now, if you've got a really bad history with them where you're not paying, that's going to be a lot more difficult to do. So it's better if you've not been ignoring them. But that is one thing that you can do.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like that just because, you're kind of leveraging, your options at that point. Which, also applying for, another credit card that allows for a balance transfer is another option. But just make sure to do it systematically, as far as having a method and a plan in place on how you're going to pay off that credit card, by a certain amount, and not adding to that credit card balance.
Yes.
Because if you transfer it and then you say, and now I don't have to pay interest on it anymore, and then just keep adding to it, then that whole that whole idea goes down the drain.
Well, and what a lot of people don't realize, and it's not with every card, but with many of these companies that say, well, we'll give you 16 months interest free.
Mm-hmm.
What you're not realizing is that typically that interest is still accruing. And if you wait longer than the interest period, like than that promotional period, they just pile it all on at the end.
Wow.
A lot of them do that. So if you think that you're going to be able to just go that period of time without interest and there's no cost to you, that's not accurate. So make sure you can pay off anything that you've transferred into that card during the promotional period.
Yeah.
And like Mark said, quit adding to it. That's the slashing the other tires.
Exactly.
If you're already in credit card debt, if you just keep adding to it, you're just constantly drowning.
Yeah, exactly. And we know that it can be hard to know where to start. So that's why we always start with credit cards, is because that is the highest interest debt or loan that you're going to carry most of the time. So it's going to have the highest impact as far as paying it off first.
Yes. So carrying those credit card balances, that's one of those mistakes that we see all the time that people, well, I think the thing that they tell themselves that we didn't cover and I forgot to put in here is, if I carry a balance, that's good for my credit score. We've talked about credit scores before. There's an episode called Give Yourself Some Credit. You can go check that out. Talks about your credit score and how it's impacted. Carrying those balances actually isn't beneficial to you long term, even outside of just the fees, because your credit utilization score affects your credit score. So you learn more about that on Giving Yourself Some Credit. Also,
carrying a balance just makes it more possible that you're going to have a late payment, and payment history is one of the top factors that determines your credit score. So
yes, so carrying those balances, and more importantly, what it stems from, which is overspending. One of those major mistakes we see that people don't realize they're doing.
Yeah.
The next one, I called it delaying preparation, and this is kind of a broad title for a lot of subjects, in my opinion. There are a lot of things in life that are just not fun. Like life insurance is not fun. Car insurance is not fun.
Yeah.
Homeowners insurance.
All the insurances.
Yes. But if you delay reviewing that, if you don't take time to have the right coverage, it can really hurt. I mean, you think, we're stationed out of Little Rock, the show is, and we recently had a major tornado come through central Little Rock and take a ton of people's homes. A ton of apartments were affected by this. Did they have renter's insurance to protect their property that was damaged in this? Insurance is the one product out there you buy hoping never to have to use.
Exactly.
But if you had gotten your homeowner's policy, say 10 years ago, and at that point it was enough to cover rebuilding your home, but with inflation, it wouldn't cover it now, you're not going to be in the best shape. So have you had that reviewed?
Right.
Because I think a lot of people with their insurance, they set it and forget it.
Yeah. I mean, it can be easy too, because for most of us, including myself, it's kind of just checking off the box saying, okay, I got that covered. And, you know that payment's going to come out, and you kind of cringe every time you see it in your statements. But it's like, all right, I've got something.
It is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. So, where we get to see that a lot as far as just like delaying preparation, and, where we really try to make headway on helping people be prepared is retirement, right? Because a lot of folks wait until they're older, whether it be because they want to help their kids out and wait until they're done with college to really start thinking about retirement and that kind of thing. And it can really have a big impact on folks. So that's, I would say, where I see delaying preparation being a very costly mistake.
Yes. And I think emotional decision making within that realm has really delayed some people. I've had some clients who said back in 2008, they went to cash after the market dipped, and it took them years to get back in the market, and they missed out on all these opportunities to recover. So, if you're, bouncing around and letting the day-to-day stresses determine your future retirement, that's a very unhealthy habit to build. And then missing out on an employer match. We've read study after study after study that says people are just not participating in their employer plan, which means you're leaving money on the table. If your employer gave you the option of getting $5,000 extra in income, you wouldn't turn that down. But when you don't take that match, you're turning down money. It's just your future money.
Exactly. Yeah. I was just talking to a guy earlier that is going to be working in a place that has a 10% match to their 403B plan. And it's, and I told him, okay, if you contribute, 10%, let's say 10% is $10,000 of your, your income. that means that at the end of the year, you're not going to have 10% in the 403b in this retirement plan. You're going to have $20,000 in there because they're going to match.
Added.
Yeah. So again, that's $10,000 extra beyond what, his salary would have been, just in, like you said, free money.
Mm-hmm. We talked about preparing for loss. We talked about preparing for retirement. And another one that people tend to forget is preparing their estate.
Mm-hmm.
When is the last time you did a beneficiary review? And I'm not necessarily saying you need an estate plan. Not everybody does. I would say most people would benefit from it, from my experience.
Mm-hmm.
But even something as simple as a beneficiary review. Have you looked at your bank account to make sure you have payable on death? Have you looked at your employer plan to make sure you don't just have a primary beneficiary, but also a backup, a contingent beneficiary? Mm-hmm. Have you checked your life insurance? Mm-hmm. Have you gone, through, if you own a business, have you made sure there's kind of boundaries in place to protect your heirs if you were to pass away as the business owner?
Yeah.
That's like the basics.
Yes.
And then getting with an estate planning attorney to just look at everything and make sure that you're covered. Mm-hmm. That's one that I think people delay because it feels overwhelming, but it's so critical. I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly personally in my life from being prepared to not.
Yeah. I mean, obviously that has a bigger impact if you have a lot of possessions, right? Mm-hmm. If you have a great wealth, but however little you have, I mean, you still want to steward that well, and you want to make sure that if something happens to you, that, your wishes are carried out with those funds that you worked hard for.
Yes. Well, and even if it's not a lot of money, I have a client whose husband passed away and it was expected. So we had been going through some things. There was one account that he told me it had been closed. Mm-hmm. So it was off my radar. Mm-hmm. Come to find out it had not been closed and he did not have a beneficiary listed. So this client has been chasing this one tiny little, it was his fund money account that he just kind of bought individual stocks with.
Oh yeah.
And so it has been a huge headache for my client to just get that settled. And she's a spouse. So that's an easy transition when you're a spouse. It's much more difficult when it's not the spouse.
Right. Yeah. No, that can be, and I know from experience as well, it can be a real pain. Mm-hmm. And one thing that I'm definitely guilty of, I'm not even going to lie here, but is planning ahead for holidays, right? Mm-hmm. And just things that are coming up, and they come up every year, and can a lot of times cause, and I've seen this for some clients as well, that cause people to use credit cards, right? So paying for Christmas, paying for vacations, paying for birthdays and that kind of thing, anniversaries.
Yes,
it's like,
it can pile on, and what cracks me up, I do it too. Mm-hmm. What cracks me up is like every year, every time I've ever done that, I'm like, I knew this was coming. Yeah. I know that I have 3 children who have birthdays right around Christmas. Mm-hmm. And it's like one of those things always slips my mind.
Yeah.
And
so, so here's a pro tip, right? And something that I think is just good, logical, and will help you out, right? So instead of just marking the day on the calendar where it happens, go back like 6 months before that, and on that day, mark or just remind yourself, like, start saving for this thing, right? Because it's great that you've got it, that day marked in the calendar, so your spouse or better half isn't upset with
unawares.
You. Yes, but being prepared for it is even better.
And I think too, if you have direct deposit, you can set your direct deposit. At most employers, you can use more than one bank account. So if you say, okay, I want to spend X amount on Christmas every year, then you can set your deposits to go directly to a separate account so that it's not getting absorbed through lifestyle inflation into the budget every month, and you have that set aside. That's actually what I finally did this year is I have an account that I use typically for emergency savings, but I told myself I'm going to move a certain amount every single month so that I'm not stuck this year going, and having to, use my emergency savings for Christmas. I did it once, okay? But, we're learning. We're moving on.
That's right.
And then our last mistake, I call this DIY finances, doing it yourself. Now, there are a lot of things you can do yourself, but you also need to be careful because preparing for your financial journey, it includes a lot of different pieces. I think a lot of times we get tunnel vision on 1 or 2 subjects, but there's a lot of little pieces that add up. So whether it's working on financial literacy, retirement, insurance, estate planning, having someone with some specialized training help get you through that can benefit you. And, there's a bunch of examples. Like you can do an estate plan on LegalZoom. right?
Yeah.
But are you going to make sure it follows your state's laws? Are you going to file the right paperwork? Because you can have a beneficiary deed, but if you don't file it with your county, doesn't count.
Exactly.
So there's things like that like, yes, you can create documents, but do you know how to implement the process?
Yes. And usually with most of these things, right, whether you're talking about estate planning or life insurance or financial planning, for retirement and that kind of thing, you kind of get this idea in mind that, okay, I'm going to watch a YouTube video and then I'm going to go in and I'm just going to get Mr. Inspector Gadget this thing. And then you get in and you're like, oh man, like there's like thousands of options to choose from. Which one is right for me?
Yes.
Right. And obviously that's a big part of why we're here. But the whole point of this being that it's a lot more complicated, and we can obviously help cut through a lot of the confusion and the options to help you figure out, okay, which one is what you're looking for and what's right in your situation. And a lot of times that can change with time as well. So that's something that, again, having those constant reviews, that's the whole purpose of that.
Have you ever met with someone, I know I have, but I'm just curious if this is unique to me, but have you ever met with someone, they said, this is my goal? And you start asking them questions, and by the end of the meeting, they're like, oh, wait, no, that wasn't my goal. That wasn't what I needed. I thought I needed that, but now that I'm thinking about it, I need this other thing.
Yes.
That's the difference of having a professional, in my opinion, is you have someone to dig deeper, because there's usually something behind what you think your goal is. And you may be completely spot on. Your goal may be exactly what you think it is. Cool. We can help you get there. Or, if it's an estate plan, they can help you get there. But I think the key is to have an unbiased source
yes,
that can help you filter information and figure out how to apply what you've learned, because I just think it just accelerates your growth.
Yes.
So
without
it's time. Yeah. What'd you say? I'm sorry.
Without a doubt. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's time for our 2 cents. Mark, do you want to go first?
Yeah. So everybody makes mistakes, right? We've talked about that. We've made mistakes. And the thing is, you can't just stay there. Start fresh today by picking one of these items that we've talked about to make a change and focus on that, because honestly, you've got this. There's nothing stopping you. You can get started today and build a bright future. If
something today resonated, I'd encourage you to start today, because delaying a decision is not going to get you down the road like you'd like to go. And I think, if you're going to get on a journey, you got to start somewhere. So start today, pick something that you go, man, I could do better here, and get rolling towards that. And if you need some help identifying what steps you can take, we do have a deliverable on our website, getreadyforthefuture.com, called 6 Keys to Financial Independence. So you can get on there and download that. We've got a ton of other stuff on our website too. We have a bunch of information that if you're trying to grow your financial knowledge base, that you can utilize for yourself. So thank you so much for joining us on Talking Sense. If you're catching this on the Gem Wealth Radio Hour, we'd encourage you to go check out our YouTube channel or podcast. Those are other ways to have this delivered straight to you instead of you having to catch it in your car. We have over 100 different episodes on different financial topics that can help you on your journey to financial independence.
Thanks for listening to Talking Sense. And if you like what you hear, make sure and subscribe to the podcast to get all the newest episodes.
The Gem Wealth team is available to you 24/7 at info@getreadyforthefuture.com or by calling our offices at 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526.
And while we like to have fun here, we're also financial advisors, and that means disclosures. You should personally consult with a financial advisor before making any investments, and no strategy can assure success.
Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through Independent Advisor Alliance. Independent Advisor Alliance and Gem Wealth Financial Advisors are separate entities from LPL Financial.